Pepsi Watson, Crime and Justice TV, what's happening YouTube? Shout out to Asif Khan and Michael over in East London. Shout out to Quadrix Josh. Shout out to Marty, also in Ireland, and a special mention to Tommy Bateman, who I've been in touch with recently. So this video is my first time in prison at 15 years old in 1997 at HMP Norwich. In 1997, when I first went into prison, I was 15 years old. I'd already been in a secure unit at Shepherd's Bush in West London, but this was my first time in a proper prison, and I was a 15-year-old child. At this time, my life was a total mess. I was running away from children's homes, committing crime. The police were always after me. I was taking a lot of drugs. I was living a very chaotic lifestyle. And I know across the world, there's a lot of children in this situation right now. And I can really empathize with the overwhelming despair, hopelessness, and confusion that a child would be feeling at this age who is leading this kind of lifestyle. So at this time, I was sleeping anywhere I could, really. I used to stay in my friend's shed, and I used to have an electric heater. It was winter, and I used to commit crime to buy clothes, food, and to pay my friend £5 or £10 for the electric heater in his shed. At this time, I'd racked up a few burglary and attempted burglary charges, and the courts kept giving me bail, so I just carried on living the life that I was living until eventually I was remanded into custody at Norwich Youth Court in 1997 when I was 15 years old. And I remember when the magistrate said we were remanding you in custody, I just remember feeling this awful feeling of dread, fear, hopelessness, helplessness, confusion, and just this intense anticipation of what was to come. So my mind was racing a million miles an hour, and I was sitting in the court cell on a wooden bench in this freezing cold court cell room at Norwich Youth Court. And on the walls, you could see like all the names of previous prisoners who'd been in custody and been sent to prison, where they'd scratched their names in the walls. And then I learned over the years that that's kind of what you do when you're in the cell. You just scratch your name out of boredom, really. And I remember sitting in this youth custody court cell, and this big steel door opened, and they said, "We're ready for you now." And these two court cell officers handcuffed me and took me onto this prison van. So they put me into this prison van. It's a long white van in this kind of dark, kind of like room underneath the court, this concrete cold room, very dim lit, and it's got shutters. I mean, you already feel like you're locked up. I mean, you already are locked up. And you walk onto this white prison van, and they put you in this like small little chicken pen with like plastic windows. You can sort of see out, but not really clearly. And you've got no seat belt, and you sit on this plastic chair, and you just look out the window, and the door opened, the shutters went up, and I went out, and it was only a short ride up to Norwich Prison. But I remember looking out the windows and just seeing all the normal people, happy people, boyfriend and girlfriends, people going to work, people shopping, enjoying their freedom. And I just felt this overwhelming sense of sadness, despair, hopelessness, and anticipation of what was to come. I was very tired, very kind of feeling down, but I was kind of like wide awake at the same time because of my current reality, which was one of just complete despair and hopelessness, really. So the van turned left onto Knox Road after coming up Ketts Hill. I remember seeing these big, tall, grey metal prison fences with barbed wire across the top. And just above the top of the barbed wire, sort of just behind in the distance, you could see these dark gloomy looking Victorian brick prison cells with this dirty roof. Again, it had barbed wire on the top. You could see the bars. And it was just an awful feeling of anticipation, intense anticipation and dread and uncertainty, a feeling of uncertainty, a feeling of the unknown. You know, you hear all these stories about prison, all these awful stories, people getting attacked, people getting cut, people getting raped, and all of that's kind of going through your mind. So I was taken out of the van into Norwich prison reception. I was made to strip naked, which was humiliating, and I was made to wear a prison tracksuit, which had a funny smell. I later came to realise that this smell that you smell when you walk into a prison reception is the same smell that you smell every time you go in there. It's the smell of the green prison sheets, the green or yellow prison blankets, and just a smell of prison. Funny smell. I was locked in a room first for just what seemed like hours, you know, and then it kind of dawns on you that, you know, you have no control over your life anymore. You sit where you're told to sit. You go where you're told to go. You wait until they are finished with you waiting and they're ready to take you from A to B. And you don't have, you know, you've lost your liberty, you've lost your freedom to be able to make choices and decisions and to go wherever you want, whenever you want, and to go to the toilet when you want. You know, if you want to go to the toilet, you have to ring the bell or bang on the door and wait for an officer and say, can I go to the toilet, please? You lose your complete liberty and your complete freedom. You're locked up and you're in prison. So I was taken onto the landing, G1 on G-Wing. G-Wing had 100 or so, 120 prisoners. There was people in there for murder. There was people in there for GBH Section 18, attempted murder, robberies, burglaries, car crime. Just over 100 lads from dysfunctional backgrounds. A lot of angry young lads and children aged between 15 and 21. But at the time when I was there was only 3 or 4 15-year-olds. Most of the rest of the lads on there were 18, 19, 20, 21. And I remember as I was taken onto the landing, I remember the prison officer walking down this long landing, dark, gloomy, uninviting, old, decaying. You can already sense the kind of hostile atmosphere. And I remember him opening this metal gate and taking me onto G1, the one's landing, on G-Wing, and I just remember this just noise, just shouting, screaming, banging, people shouting and screaming out the sides of their doors and out of their windows, and it just terrified me, and it just enveloped me in fear, and all the emotions I was feeling, the hopelessness, the helplessness, the despair, it was all amplified and enhanced as I walked along this landing. And I felt really kind of alive. I was very conscious of me, of myself, of my current reality. You know, every footstep, every time that I walked forward and walked past all these cells, and I saw the cells with the name cards, you know, and there's people banging, shouting, and they've walked me along the end to number 17, and they've put me in this double cell with a guy called Glover, who was 20 years old. So I was 15, and they put me in with a 20-year-old. Now, as soon as the officer shut the door and locked the door, I was now alone in this cell with this guy called Glover. And the second that this prison officer shut the door, there was just an eruption of noise. And there were, like I said, it was already noisy and chaotic on there anyway. But as soon as that prison officer shut the door, there was this eruption of noise. "Oi, new boy, come to your door. Oi, next door, come to your door." They're banging my wall, thud, thud, boom, boom. "Oi, next door, come to your door. Oi, new boy, come to the door." It was relentless, and it just went on and on and on, and they're shouting at me, screaming at me. "Come to your door, we're going to weigh you in the morning. Come to your door, we're going to cut your face in the morning. come to your door next door. Boom, boom, boom. Banging my wall on the right side, on the left side. Everybody on the landing shouting and screaming for me to come to the door. And I just stood there, crippled with fear and helplessness, you know, and I didn't know what to do. I was completely terrified and scared. And I remember saying to my cellmate, Glover, what do I do? And he just sat on his bed and said, you need to go to the door. So I went to the door, and as soon as I went to the door, I've gone to the door, and you've got a little gap about half an inch where you put your mouth to the door. There's probably hundreds of other people who put their mouth to the door, and it's all germs and nasty and horrible. The door's filthy, and it's a red metal with all scratches in it where people have scratched their names, and there's all dents in it where people have been banging the door. And as soon as I went to the side of the door, and I just said, yeah, you know, there was just a second wave, a second eruption of noise and shouting and screaming. Where you from? What you in for? Sing me a song, or we're going to punch you up in the morning. We're going to cut you in the morning. Sing me a song, or we're going to smash you up with a table leg in the morning. Just this relentless stream of voices and threats and bullying and victimization. And there's no one there to help you. There's no prison officers, you know, coming down the land and to tell everybody, oh, stop, leave this child alone. You know, you're there on your own, and it's dog eat dog, hostile, uninviting, and it's hell on earth, yeah? Hell on earth as a 15-year-old child in this environment. And this went on for hours, you know. They had me at the door for hours. They had me just in this grip of fear and victimization and helplessness. I think, if I recall correctly, I think I did even sing a song in the end, because I was so terrified of all the threats of violence and the thought of me being attacked the next day that I sung a song just to try and shut them up. But it just made it worse, you know, and they just carried on all night, you know, terrorizing me at the door. And the reason I talk about this now is because I just want everybody to know across the world who's watching this, you know, if you're a child and you're being bullied, then I hope that you can listen to my story and maybe ask for help, or talk to a teacher if you're being bullied at school, talk to your mum or dad or parents or guardians or sibling, brother or sister or close friend. You know, just speak to somebody, or a social worker if you're in care, or a care home, a children's home, you know. And I hope by talking about this experience of being bullied that it might encourage and help somebody to ask for help and not suffer in silence, because it's a horrible experience. It's a very lonely existence and an awful experience to go through as a child. Excuse me. So the next day, and I didn't sleep a wink all night. I remember it vividly. I was just like that, awake all night, terrified, scared, because I'd received so many threats, hundreds of threats all night, you know, that I'm going to be killed in the morning, cut in the morning, attacked in the morning, beaten up with a table leg in the morning, hot watered in the morning. And the doors opened in the morning, and I was just there, trembling, scared, frightened, and people are coming to the door. It's a bustle of activity. They let people out in the exercise yard. People are looking in my cell. Everyone's gone out in the exercise yard. There's a fight on the yard. Two people are fighting. The officers have split it up, dragged the two lads back onto the wing. And it was just a very hostile, violent, testosterone-filled, chaotic, loud, noisy, relentless atmosphere. So every night at the door, I was kind of victimized and bullied, you know, 15 years old, you know, like a fish out of water, didn't know how to deal with it, very intimidated. I felt very threatened, helpless, and it was just a living nightmare. So what happened was this continued for a few days, and then there was a couple of older guys who were like, I was 15, they were like 18. There was a couple of older guys called Shane Kirk and Gareth Turner. Now, Shane Kirk used to run this wing. No one used to mess with him. He was tall, hard as nails, game. You know, he had loads of heart. He would fight anybody. He wasn't a bully, but he would fight bullies who bullied other people. And he was a Norwich lad, heart of gold, really nice lad. And him and Gareth Turner Shane Kirk and Gareth Turner were up on the 3s or the 4s landing. I was down on the 1s, and they said they were going to have a smash up, yeah, or a riot, yeah. So they're shouting me at the window because I was a Norwich boy. They were calling all the Norwich boys up and saying, look, it's on tonight, yeah. And then they told me what I had to do. I had to rip my table leg off, and then when they said go, and I had to smash the toilet first with the table leg, then the sink, then I had to smash the rest of my table up, my cupboard, then the light, and then the glass flap, what the officers look through. So all the anticipation is building. It's late at night. It's like 11, 12 o'clock at night. Everybody's shouting out their windows. It's just non-stop noise, yeah? Non-stop noise. There's no TVs. A few people have got stereos and such like, but most people are just shouting and screaming out the windows, sending lines to each other, victimizing people, terrorizing people, ruthless, completely ruthless, unforgiving, merciless, violent, physical, testosterone-filled atmosphere, monitored by no prison officers, every man for himself. So the anticipation is building. They've done a countdown, 30 seconds, a minute, 30 seconds, 20 seconds, 10 minutes, and they're shouting at me from the 4s to the 1s, don't let me down, son, don't let me down. Make sure you smash your toilet. As soon as you hear my toilet go, then you need to smash yours, or you're going to get weighed in the morning. So I'm listening, and then I just heard it. I heard this porcelain smash from all the way up on the 4s landing. So I knew they'd done it. So I knew it was now my turn. So I grabbed my table leg, which I'd ripped off the table, and I smashed my toilet. Flushed it, so all the water went everywhere. It was all coming out onto the landing. Then I smashed the sink off, smashed all the sink into little pieces. Then I smashed all my table up. Glover was sitting on the bottom bunk. He was just sitting there reading a book. And I just started to just tear the cell to smithereens, flat pack the cell, yeah? So that's what they call it. I'm going to flat pack my cell, have a smash up, yeah? Smashing the cupboard up. And these cupboards, they're quite firm, yeah? So you're getting cuts on your hands, you're dripping with sweat. The whole cell floor's covered in water. And I learned over the years that when you do this, you put all your letters in the bag, all your photographs, your toiletries, and you put it all on your bunk, and then you just flat pack the cell. So everybody's at their windows shouting and screaming. Everyone's shouting, yes, Norwich boys, riot, smashing up the wing. Norwich boys, let's have it. Bring it on, bring on the Muftis, the riot squad, and it's just all kicking off. You can hear water pouring down all the stairs. You can just hear water, like a waterfall, just dripping and pouring down all the stairwells, because there's about 10 of us who smashed up ourselves. So it's just complete chaos. I can smell smoke now. So you've got all the water coming down the stairs. People are still smashing things. They're smashing the glass out of their flaps, smashing the light. I can smell smoke. I put my mirror outside and look, and people are setting fires. They're setting fire to magazines, prison T-shirts, prison tracksuits, bed sheets, and they're throwing everything onto the fire. They're all shouting and screaming, out the window. Absolutely mental. I felt hot, excited. I didn't know what to expect. So, and I said to my cellmate, Glover, I said, what's going to happen now? And I'll never forget this. He said, you're going to get bent up. You're going to get bent up. And I didn't know what that meant. And as soon as he said that, I thought he meant you're going to get raped. That's what I thought he meant. And it was like an hour and a half later, a prison governor, I heard him walking along the landing, and you could just hear squelch, 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 where he's walking with his shoes on through all the water, because all the water's just pouring all around the landing, down the stairs, and you can still hear it. And I heard this prison governor say, let's get the Muftis in and we're going to bend them up. We're going to bend them all up. And when he said that again, that was the second time I'd heard it, you're going to get bent up. They might have even looked through the flap and then shut the flap. Again, that reinforced it. I thought, I'm going to get raped. And then a little while after that, I remember sitting at my window Everyone's laughing and shouting, and Shane and Gareth, they're shouting, yeah, Norwich boys, nice one, riot squad, let's have it. And I remember looking out of this window past the exercise yard with a 16-foot metal grey fence with a barbed wire. Now, half of this 16-foot fence is metal, what you can't see through, and the rest of it is mesh, and you can see through it. And I remember just in the distance watching like 4 or 5 white transit vans with lights on just cruising along the side of the prison, yeah? So the Mufti Squad were coming. Now, the Mufti Squad are prison officers who've come in at night time in full riot gear, shields, bats, and they're driving along in these white transits. And I remember just this intense, overwhelming fear of anticipation. I was terrified, and I thought they were coming to rape me. That's what I thought, and I was so scared and petrified. Now, this cellmate that I had, he kept, whinging to me and going on, make sure you tell him it was nothing to do with me. Make sure you tell him it was nothing to do with me. And I was like, all right. And it wasn't. He didn't do anything. He didn't participate. He didn't get involved. It was me who just trashed and flat packed the entire cell. I'm smashing the glass flap out, throwing bits and pieces out of the hole. This tiny little, hole in the metal door. And then eventually, the Mufti Squad approached all 4 landings. And you could hear them. The first thing you hear is their boots. You hear them stomping, coming along like this. You hear them come onto the landing. You hear them talking. They're not discreet. They make you aware of your presence. And I heard them go in on someone else. It might have been a couple of cells, and they go in with 8 of them. So double cell, 8 officers, 8 fully grown men. You're 15 years old. They're 8 fully grown, tall, big men with bats, shields, helmets, all blacked out in this blacked out riot Mufti Squad kit. And I can hear just banging and crashing and loud noise, and then I'm hearing the prisoners scream. And again, that reinforced it. They're sexually assaulting them. That's what I thought. It's just mental. And then eventually they've come to my door, opened the flat, stand by the back wall, stand by the back wall. So I'm just like, all right, I don't want any trouble. So I've stood by the back wall. They've cracked the door, and then they just flew in, all 8 of them. And they've got these long riot plastic see-through shields, and they've just squashed me into the corner. I think I was sitting on the bed. They threw me into the corner, into all the water, and they've squashed me, like 3 of them with these shields. So I'm like squashed in the corner like this, and they're getting my arms out the sides of the shield. That's what they do, to get your arms. And then they get your arms, and then they throw you on the floor, bend you up like this, put your arms behind your back. So this is what they meant by, we're going to bend you up. They're going to bend you up. And I'm still waiting for them to sexually assault me. That's what I thought was going to happen to me. And I just went into shock. I wasn't screaming or shouting or saying, get off me or help or anything like that. I just went into shock. And they've bent me up on the floor like this. All my mouth's in the water, this dirty, filthy toilet water. There's porcelain everywhere, wood everywhere, dirt everywhere. It's all gone in my mouth, my nose, my eyes. Stop struggling. That's what they were saying to me. But I wasn't struggling. Stop struggling. And like now they're like really hurting me. Like they're bending my wrists with my thumb like this, really, really hurting me. And they've dragged me out the cell. And they're walking me like in a stress position, loads of them, and all you can see is black boots, black batons, black helmets, black gloves. All you can see is black, and you're disorientated, you're dripping with sweat, you're hot, you're cold. It's very kind of intense. You feel helpless because you've got fully grown adults in complete control of you in a very uncomfortable position, walking you down a pitch dark landing, down a corridor, then another corridor into the block, the segregation unit, the isolation unit. And then they open the door, they crack the door, and it's just like a concrete tomb. There's nothing in it other than a potty to urinate and go to the toilet in. There's no taps, no water. there's no windows. It's just like a white grate with tiny little holes covering the window. And then they put you on the floor. They put you on the floor like that, long ways. Sometimes they pull a knife out, cut your clothes off. But they didn't do that. They just stripped me, took all my clothes off. So I'm naked on the floor, stone cold floor, freezing cold cell. And then they shout 1, 2, 3, 4, and they all get off you and run out the cell and shut the door. And then you get up, your wrists are sore, and I'm just sitting on this concrete kind of bed with this tiny 1-inch thin blue prison mattress. I had no blanket, no rug, anything like that. Then they opened the door about 2 minutes later and threw in a pair of blue Y-fronts. So I'm just sitting there naked, apart from blue Y-fronts, no water, no drink, no food, no tobacco, just sitting in this cell, cold, lonely, scared. I hadn't been raped, but and a lot of that fear had gone, but I never knew if they were going to come back in. They kept opening the flap, looking in at me, slamming the flap. And I was just stuck in this cell. And then I think Gareth Turner was next door and he was shouting me to the window. And this is what happens, you create these bonds. This is the only kind of interaction you get that is prolonged, this interaction with the other prisoners. And now I kind of won their respect because I joined in and participated in the riot where other prisoners from Norwich, other lads who'd been there for months and months, didn't have the courage to participate. So I'd won their respect, and they used to send me tobacco and look after me, and they kind of took me under their wing. Gareth Turner and Shane Kirk, they took me under their wing and helped me out and looked after me. So it was quite a nice feeling. But then I had consequences for smashing up and participating in the riot. They put me in the cage, so isolation. So at the end of G1, they had a cage, put me in the cage, 23-hour bang up, no proper windows, isolated, no radio, no TV. Used to come out for an hour exercise, and that was it. Banged up 23 hours a day, long nights, boring, mind-numbingly boring, twisting and turning on the bed, trying to sleep, waking up, sleeping, waking up, sleeping. 3 meals a day at the door, come round with a trolley, feed you at the door. Just completely locked away and isolated, not only from the free world and the community, but also locked away and isolated from the wing. Again, all the noise and chaos just carried on all night, constant shouting, constant screaming, all night long till 5, 6, 7 in the morning. And in the daytime, just banging doors, people going on the exercise yard fighting, people attacking each other with table legs, with pool balls in socks, with all sorts of different weapons. People used to get cut. People used to go to hospital. People used to get hot water thrown in their faces first thing in the morning. It was just mental. It was just a wing of complete chaos, violence, unforgiving, merciless, every man for himself. And, you become a product of that environment. So you either remain a victim and you will spend your entire time being victimized, or you become a bully. In the same way that I was bullied on those first few nights, that first couple of weeks, you become a perpetrator of that bullying and you bully others. And then I became a window warrior. I became someone who used to sit at my window all night chatting and shouting to people and, come to your window. Oi, come to your window. And then you go to your window and then someone has a joke and says, get your head down, put your head on your pillow, ha, 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 ha. Just constant jokes, constant terrorizing each other, constant madness, chaos, and absolutely no rehabilitation whatsoever. At no point will any officer even bother to question you or challenge you about any of the behaviour or conduct that led to the Index Offence Commission, and which led to you, and the lifestyle and the views and the pro-criminal thinking which led to you becoming incarcerated in the first place. And you don't think about your victims of crime. You don't think about them because you're too preoccupied and immersed with thinking about your present reality and surviving and trying not to be bullied. And the default idea, the notion, you know, the idea that the default position of incarcerating somebody will be one where you incarcerate them in a prison cell, and as a natural course of process and events, you will then repent and think about your victims, is just not in proportion to reality. Because, you know, for somebody to think about their victims and to start the process of rehabilitation and personal change and that rigorous self-examination, which will influence personal change, which will influence you, one, addressing their pro-criminal thinking and their reckless lifestyle or drug addiction and such like, which led to the Index Offence Commission. You know, that process will only happen if you are challenged about that by the staff that are responsible for your well-being and care within the institutional custodial environment, either one-to-one with them spending time with you, or in a group therapy type setting, or with some kind of daily structure. But there is no structure. You can sleep all day. You know, you can lay in bed all day. You don't have to work. You know, you might lose some kind of punishment if you refuse to go in education, but then even the education department will only educate you up to level 2 English and maths, which is the equivalent to a C or a D grade in GCSE anyway. So these environments are not structured in any way to rehabilitate. They're structured and designed in a way, even now in the modern age in modern Britain, to harm you, traumatize you. And there's a drug epidemic of proportions never seen before. So you leave prison worse, you leave more violent, more angry, more aggressive, a product of the system with no decent level of education. And if you leave without a drug habit, you're very lucky. So that's it, just about, for this video. My first time in prison at 15 years old at HMP Norwich in 1997. Eventually, after this period in custody, my first time in a real prison, I was then shipped off to Feltham. I've made another video about that experience. I'll put that link into the description. Again, I reiterate, if you're a child at school getting into trouble or being bullied, please ask for help. Please do everything you can to focus on your education. If you don't, and you end up getting involved with the police and you end up going into youth custody, prison will destroy your life. It will strip you of everything, all humanity, your dignity, your pride, your self-respect, and you will be stuck in a trap of the revolving door of the modern British penal system, because the modern British youth custody penal system is not structured in any way to rehabilitate. It is structured and designed in a way to create lifetime long violent chronic recidivists who will continue to go on to commit offences and be stuck in the revolving door of a penal system which has embedded into its very core and culture a culture of child abuse, abuse against children, institutional racism, and a culture of, as soon as you as a child go into that prison, you are no longer seen as human, you are seen as subhuman. I hope you enjoyed the video. That's it from me, Pepsi Watson at Crime and Justice TV. I wish you all, as always, good health, prosperity and blessings. And above all, and most importantly, may you love by recognizing yourself in others.